right, folks, ever wondered why the government tells you there's no money for hospitals, schools, or lowering your taxes? But somehow they always find billions for things you've never even heard of. Well, tonight we're pulling back the curtain on the hidden costs of government. And make sure you stick around until the very end, because what I'm about to reveal will absolutely blow your mind. Now, we're not talking about a few wasted millions here or there. We're talking about over £100 billion a year disappearing. And by the end of this video, you'll see exactly where it goes. Before we dive in, do me a favour. Hit that like button so more people see this, and subscribe to TruthCast UK if you believe taxpayers deserve the truth. And let me know in the comments, what would you do if you had an extra £100 billion to spend? So, let's start with something simple. Ministers love telling you to use public transport. They'll happily lecture you about cycling, walking and taking the bus. But behind the scenes, they're racking up almost £4 million a year on chauffeur-driven cars. Thanks to a fresh Freedom of Information request, we now know that the government car service is costing us about £330,000 every single month. That's an annual bill of nearly £3.9 million. And which department tops the list? The Ministry of Justice, spending almost £500,000 a year just to be ferried around. Other departments aren't far behind. Housing, business, health, and even the Home Office are all cashing in on luxury private rides. And just when you think it can't get sillier, we find out that the government even spends thousands on dispatch box journeys. That means empty cars driving wooden red boxes around London, £14,000 in a year just to move furniture. Meanwhile, you're told to tighten your belt and accept there's more taxes on the way. But cars are only the beginning. Oh, wait until you hear this one. When they want to feel really important, ministers take to the skies. The government's VIP Voyager jets have cost around £6 billion since 2008. And here's the catch. We pay hundreds of millions every year to keep these planes on standby, whether anyone's flying in them or not. While NHS waiting lists spiral and people are waiting months for basic treatment, billions are poured into luxury air travel. You're told there's no money for nurses, but there's always money for ministers to have their own private airline. And then there's the army of consultants. Every year, billions are paid out to private firms for work the civil service is supposedly there to do. Government ministers like to claim they're cutting back. They announce headline-grabbing pledges to slash consultancy by 20%. But in reality, departments still fork out eye-watering sums. We're talking day rates of £1,500 or more, often for people who are barely out of university. So while frontline workers are told to accept pay freezes, private firms cash in on a government that cannot run itself. Now let's talk about the biggest hidden tax of all, fraud and error. According to the National Audit Office, between £55 and £81 billion leaks out of government coffers every year because of mistakes, overpayments and outright fraud. To put that in perspective, that's more than the entire school's budget for the country. If this were a private company, heads would roll and the directors would be dragged into court. But in government, it's just another Tuesday. They call it administrative loss. I call it daylight robbery. Then there's the NHS negligence bill. Every year, the health service pays out around £2.6 billion in compensation for mistakes and malpractice. And that's just the start. The Treasury has set aside nearly £69 billion for future claims. That's £69 billion of your money sitting there ready to pay for mistakes that haven't even happened yet. And at the same time, nurses and doctors are told there isn't enough cash to cover their wages. Now, COVID might feel like it's in the past, but the bills are still coming in. Remember all that protective equipment? Almost £10 billion of it has been written off as unusable. That's right, £10 billion wasted on masks, gowns and gloves that never worked or never even left their boxes. Then there's the UKHSA Science Lab project, which was supposed to cost £500 million. The bill has now exploded to over £3 billion. And just when you think it couldn't get more ridiculous, the COVID inquiry itself has already cost £108 million. Add another £20 million for the Cabinet Office's legal team, which is basically taxpayers paying lawyers to explain to other lawyers why our money was wasted. And who could forget HS2, the so-called high-speed rail project that never seems to arrive. By March 2024, over £30 billion had already been spent. That's £30 billion down the drain. When Phase 2 was scrapped, ministers promised it would save money. But here's the truth. Cancelling it will still cost another £100 million just to clean up the sites, plus over £2 billion in one-off costs to shut it down. Imagine torching $30 billion, then telling the public it's all about efficiency. Beyond the flashy projects and inquiries, there's a quieter black hole for your taxes, quangos. These so-called arm's-length bodies spend around £340 billion a year. That's nearly a third of all public spending. Yet most people couldn't even name a single one of them. These organisations aren't elected, they aren't accountable, and they manage more money than most governments on earth. And while you're struggling with rising bills, these hidden bureaucracies are quietly burning through hundreds of billions. We'll follow up with a Quango-rich list in the coming days, so please make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you don't miss it. And then, of course, there are the perks. The special advisors cost over £16 million last year, including £3 million in severance packages. That's right, you can quit on Friday, pocket a cheque, and then be back in the same job by Monday. Ministers themselves have their own safety net. Step down from government and you get a quarter of your salary as severance, even if you're back in post within months. It's a revolving door of resign, cash in and return, all courtesy of the taxpayer. So let's take stock. We've got cars, jets, consultants, fraud, negligence, PPE waste, bloated labs, endless inquiries, failed railways, quangos, and ministerial perks. Add it all up and you're looking at well over £100 billion every single year. That's money that could transform our schools, fix the NHS, or lower your taxes. Instead, it vanishes into a black hole of political privilege and bureaucratic waste. And here's the kicker. While you're cutting coupons to make the weekly shop work, your leaders are chauffeured around in private cars, flown in jets, and cushioned by perks you'll never see. That's the real cost of government. And it's the cost they never want you to see. So, folks, here's the call to action. Share this video if you think taxpayers deserve accountability. Drop a comment below. If you had £100 billion, how would you spend it? And don't forget to subscribe to TruthCast UK, because someone has to keep the receipts.